The scientist pulls his hand away sharply, unable to believe his own eyes. There's no way he just saw what he thinks he did. The dog's fur couldn't have moved on its own. Perhaps it was just his gentle stroke over her coat, her skin shifting beneath, or... No, it's a trick of the light. It has to have been. How else do you explain it? The dog sits, unfazed, clearly the same as she's always been. But a whimper reaches the scientist's ear. Even a man with the strongest willpower in the world would have felt his heart melt at the sound. She wants to be petted again, and her owner quickly obliges her. Even she's unaware what's wrong with her, what's been living with her since they returned from their trip. The scientist offers another light, cautious pet, but the dog isn't satisfied with such a meager offering. She whines again, letting him know she still hasn't received enough affection. So he reaches his hand out a third time and pats it against her fur. The dog lowers her head, resting it against his knee where he sits, contented. Under his palm, her owner tussles her smooth, well-groomed coat until he feels something tiny lash at his hand. It only lasts a split second, a fraction of a moment of time, but he feels it. A quick sensation, like touching the barb of a bee's stinger, if only for less time than it takes the clock on the wall to tick. Then, it's gone, departing as quickly as it arrived, save for the echoes of a tiny pain in the seconds that follow, each punctuated by the sound of the clock. The scientist looks at his palm, still feeling it, or feeling its absence, he isn't sure. But as far as his eyes can tell, there's nothing there. He looks at his dog, leans closer to her to see her fur, while cautiously putting a reassuring hand on her back. And this time, he's close enough to see them move. Shifting, slithering, bristling among the dog's hide, enough of them together that their individual movement is clear to see with the naked eye. It takes the scientist a moment to realize his other hand, the one he'd pet his dog with, had gone to his mouth in disbelief. Now they were living on him, too. Over the months that pass, he's never once aware just how many there are. He never notices, shaving, trimming as usual, without so much as a hair seeming out of place. Then he and his colleague, the expert, start looking deeper through microscopes at samples gathered from his dog. That's when he sees them for the first time. Dozens, too many to count. After that, he dreams of them, of tiny pinpricks burrowing into his skin at night, clawing deeper, one by one, until he too is just as covered in them as the dog. Dreams about them, or feels them. After they make their findings known, a rush of activity follows. The Foundation and the questions. They want to know all about the parasites. The scientist tells them to ask the expert. He just discovered them by accident. His colleague knows more about things too small to see. Then, one day, after dozens spent answering the same questions over and over again, the scientist is told by the Foundation that he's being taken elsewhere, somewhere he can help them in their efforts to understand the parasites. It's only when he wakes up, laying strapped to the vivisection table, that he realizes what his help will entail. The surgeons try their best to calm him, but the scientist can't stop screaming. They offer platitudes and false promises that everything will be all right as they pin down his flailing arms in their restraints. The scalpels mark out segments that are then pulled away and put in jars, samples taken to be examined under a microscope. Still, the scientist screams, because now he understands. They're living on him now, too. They're living under his skin. The SCP Foundation has since given this parasitic species the designation of SCP-189, known colloquially among personnel as the aptly descriptive Hair-Imitating Parasite, or sometimes abbreviated as Parasite. By expanding on the research conducted by Dr. F and Dr. W, researchers working at the Foundation have successfully been able to observe and track the behavior of these parasites. Analysis has revealed SCP-189 is a type of parasitic roundworm that is capable of manifesting in any mammalian life form from dogs and cats to human beings. These parasites, as their colloquial name suggests, are capable of implanting themselves into a creature's body by camouflaging themselves as individual hairs, making them difficult to detect until it's too late. The infection process of SCP-189 typically begins when an uninfected mammal comes into direct contact with a creature carrying the hair-imitating parasites. A potential new host needs to be within close enough range to SCP-189 egg sacs in order for transmission to take place. These egg sacs require direct skin-to-skin contact, as each one is covered in a series of microscopic hooks. These hooks bear some similarities to those found on the cuticles of certain species of nematodes, small, worm-like parasites either found in animals and plants, living in soil, freshwater or marine environments, and occasionally even in vinegar, beer malts, and inside water-filled cracks deep within the Earth's crust. Upon making contact with an uninfected mammal, the SCP-189 egg sacs will become anchored to the surface of a new host's skin via those microscopic hooks. These eggs do, however, require a specific catalyst to hatch. Rather than new SCP-189 parasites being born the moment the egg sacs transfer onto skin, they won't emerge until coming into contact with a specific substance, sebum. Unfortunately, sebum is most commonly found in skin, produced by sebaceous glands beneath the surface of the skin where hair follicles are present. Sebum is an oily substance that prevents skin from drying out and plays a vital role in maintaining a healthy skin barrier. While excess sebum can be cleared through a thorough skincare routine of cleaning and moisturizing, this does little to deter infections of SCP-189. Sebum will prompt anchored egg sacs to hatch, at which point the larvae inside will emerge and burrow into nearby hair follicles. Given the tiny, unobservable size of both the egg sacs and the emergent hairistic larvae, it is impossible to feel an SCP-189 infection as it occurs. Once burrowed beneath the skin inside a hair follicle, an SCP-189 larva will latch itself onto the base of the dermal papilla, beneath the root of a hair, located under the skin. Papilla are fed by capillaries, the smallest and most delicate blood vessels of the vascular system. These transport blood, nutrients, and oxygen to the various cells and mammalian organs and bodily systems, including supplying the papilla with the necessary ingredients to stimulate hair growth. Despite exactly how this has occurred, SCP-189 larvae have evolved to use the capillaries as a food source, as it grows over the course of 2 to 3 days. After this point, the now adult SCP-189 instance will have grown large enough to detach itself from the papilla. The fully matured worm will sever the hair fiber and essentially uproot an existing hair to quickly and discreetly take its place. As a fully developed adult SCP-189 instance, the parasite will fully envelop the papilla and the surrounding hair matrix, and then from that point onwards will feed on cells that are shed by the hair matrix. While these cells would, in an uninfected subject, form the hair fiber itself, an SCP-189 worm will use these to continuously grow longer without the subject's knowledge. Currently, SCP Foundation researchers are still baffled by how exactly this species of roundworm could have evolved, given how seamlessly it exploits the ordinary cellular behaviors of human beings and other mammals. Some theories among personnel suggest that SCP-189 was originally specifically biologically engineered to harness and feed on the typical hair-growing process by someone with an in-depth knowledge of how this bodily function occurs. There is, however, no evidence to support this notion, and staff are discouraged from speculating that these parasites were created intentionally via any anomalous means. While the remainder of the parasite exists beneath the skin, the only visible part of an adult SCP-189 instance is the worm's tail that extrudes outwards from the hair follicle inhabited by the parasite. The tail, resembling a hair, is able to camouflage itself by absorbing the pigments and keratin from the cells the parasite consumes. Keratin especially, as this is the protein that helps with the healthy growth of hair, as well as nails and the epidermis, the skin's outer layer. SCP-189 uses the body's natural keratin to form an outer cuticle, a thin protective layer that matches the pigmentation of an infected subject's hair. This allows for the parasites to avoid detection, as they are not only able to match the color of their host's hair, but the extruding tail of an SCP-189 worm is similar in diameter and length to a hair that would normally grow out of the follicle the parasite is burrowed into. Visually, this makes SCP-189 instances indistinguishable from normal hairs unless inspected more closely through the use of a microscope. Otherwise, a subject that has contracted an SCP-189 infection will be completely unaware that they are carrying an anomalous parasite, apart from other certain circumstances. For reasons that the Foundation is still yet to understand, while most instances of SCP-189 remain undetectable and are indistinguishable from hair, others will occasionally move independently. Some specimens of SCP-189 worms have been observed flexing their tails, coiling or uncoiling, and lashing their hair-like extrusions in response to certain tactile stimulation. It is unclear why some instances of these parasites will seemingly attack other organisms, and this behavior has only been observed in a handful of specimens. Some Foundation experts in anomalous parasitology have suggested that the movements could be an involuntary response by the parasites to external stimuli, while others argue that it only occurs when an SCP-189 instance is threatened. Certain other proposed explanations for these movements have been expunged from the SCP Foundation Archive's entry on SCP-189. Unfortunately for those infected, and alarmingly for those who have observed them, SCP-189 infections are in no way benign. Far from it, actually, as instead of simply nestling under the skin and feeding on cells indefinitely, once SCP-189 parasites reach adulthood, they will begin the next phase of their life cycle. Similarly to other documented species of roundworms, SCP-189 instances are capable of creating and fertilizing their own eggs, producing between 1 and 3 at a time, which are then contained within a protective egg sac ready to be passed on to the next available host. The egg sacs themselves are similarly difficult to detect, as they are incorporated into the extruding tail that extends from beneath the skin. Once they become part of the hair-like tail, the egg sacs will develop their microscopic hooks as they mature. Then, once the tail grows to over 1 millimeter above the surface of the host's skin, they will be primed to pass on to a new subject. Fully developed SCP-189 egg sacs are loosely embedded in the tail's cuticle, and once they come into contact with the surface of a suitable host, its hooks will latch onto their skin and allow it to be pulled free from its parent. However, this process doesn't exclusively result in SCP-189 egg sacs passing from one host to the next. If the hooks are able to embed themselves in the skin of the current, existing host, then these unhatched larvae will spread onto the original subject, allowing the parasites to further infest a single mammal if they are unable to transfer it to a new host. Now, Foundation researchers have discovered that SCP-189's camouflage, appearing as ordinary hair, can be used against these parasites. As one might expect, the tails that extrude from a host's skin aren't any thicker or more durable than ordinary hair. Similarly, the head, buried beneath the skin in the hair follicle, is not attached any stronger than the root of an ordinary hair. This means that, provided the Foundation are able to identify an SCP-189 infection before the worm produces eggs and either spreads or further infects the host, there is the possibility for the parasites to be removed. Much like the hair it imitates, the parasite's tail can be broken or cut off, or the entire organism can be plucked out, or otherwise removed in the same way that ordinary hair can be. Once severed, the tail portion of an adult SCP-189 parasite can regenerate, growing a new head, becoming a separate instance of the worm. However, this is only possible if they are able to attach to a new host. Otherwise, they will starve and expire without access to capillaries of cells to feed on. Given that instances of SCP-189 that have their tails cut off can simply regrow this part of themselves, extraction of the entire organism is recommended by the SCP Foundation's trichology experts. Hair follicles containing active SCP-189 parasites can all die, owing to completely natural causes and conditions that can trigger hair loss. Any event that causes the loss of a follicle's hair similarly removes an SCP-189 parasite, forcing them to detach from their hosts, after which point they will usually die within an hour, although can last as long as 6 while separated from their previous host. Even dead adult instances of SCP-189 can pose an infection risk, though, as the eggs that they produce can remain viable for several years, meaning even if a new subject comes into direct contact with the deceased SCP-189 worm, its egg sac can still embed its hooks into their skin and pass on the parasitic infection. By far the most alarming characteristic of SCP-189 are their effects on an already dead mammal. Even if a host dies, SCP-189 specimens will continue to survive and feed on what is left of the creature's body by burrowing into their tissues. This can allow the parasites to continue to produce eggs and spread over the corpse, however, only until the deceased host begins to decay. Once this inevitable process begins, SCP-189 worms are killed by the toxins produced as the body breaks down post-mortem. However, they are still able to pass on to any that come into contact with the corpse before decay begins. In cases of SCP-189 infections in humans, coroners and morticians examining and handling bodies carrying the parasites quickly become the new host for parasite larvae. While their name has been expunged from Foundation records, the doctor responsible for the discovery of the SCP-189 parasites certainly wouldn't be quick to forget what they had uncovered. During a 6-month trip to a remote area of rainforest in a redacted part of the world, Dr. F was intending to spend the duration of their time focused on their biodiversity study, and they would have had it not been for Kara. 3 years old at the time, Kara was Dr. F's pet golden retriever and had been brought along by her owner to join the expedition. During the trip, Kara became infected with numerous instances of SCP-189. As far as records indicate, Kara was the first known infectee of this rare species of parasite. This initially went unnoticed by Dr. F, who eventually returned to the United States with Kara alongside them. By this time, it was estimated that approximately 80% of the dog's hair follicles had been infested with the parasites. Human beings possess 5 million hair follicles over their bodies, equating to between 1,800 and 3,000 hairs per inch. On average, a dog can have 15,000 strands of hair per inch of skin. Several days after making their return to the United States, Dr. F noticed while petting Kara that the retriever's fur was moving, or more accurately, the parasites were. And the close contact likely passed on multiple instances of SCP-189 to the doctor. Recognizing the abnormal infection, Dr. F contacted a parasitologist, whose name is similarly redacted from Foundation files. Dr. W received an invitation to study the newly discovered organism, and alongside Dr. F, the two submitted an academic paper detailing their findings. Upon receiving word of this paper, the SCP Foundation became aware of the existence of SCP-189 and responded by arresting both Dr. F and Dr. W. The pair were taken into Foundation custody, and their research materials, anything linking to SCP-189, were seized to prevent knowledge of these parasites being available to the public. While for some, being taken into custody by the SCP Foundation would likely be the last anyone ever heard from them, both Dr. F and Dr. W were instead recruited. Both became affiliated with the Foundation, and Dr. W was assigned to be the lead researcher in charge of SCP-189, given their background in parasitology. They were stationed in an undisclosed location to investigate indigenous populations of SCP-189 and determine solutions for their containment or extermination. Dr. F's whereabouts have been expunged from Foundation records. Presently, the Foundation has several samples of SCP-189 that it keeps stored at a classified cryogenic containment facility. Any samples kept at this facility that exceed an amount the Foundation is able to contain safely are to be destroyed via incineration immediately. Test subjects who have been infected with the parasite are kept in a sealed containment chamber with an airlock and chemical shower. Personnel that interact with these infected test subjects are required to wear standard NBC hazmat suits during their time inside, and must undergo a chemical shower before exiting the airlock and leaving the area. Whenever test subjects die, whether through the natural result of their infection or by termination, their bodies must be sealed in an airtight body bag, which will then be put through the same chemical shower prior to removal from the chamber. Then it is to be thrown into the incinerator. Should these containment measures fail, and a staff member find themselves unintentionally infested with SCP-189, they are to be quarantined in the same manner as test subjects and treated with anti-parasitic agent 189-A. If any human or animal at a Foundation site is determined to have an infestation of SCP-189, every living being on site must be inspected according to procedure. Staff members should then be treated, while D-Class and non-SCP animals must be terminated and incinerated, after which the facility is to be cleaned thoroughly with anti-parasitic agent 189-A. Cases of SCP-189 found outside of the Foundation must be taken into custody and quarantined immediately. Animals are to be euthanized and their bodies incinerated, while humans may be treated with the anti-parasitic agent and administered Class C or B amnestics. Individuals who have been or may have been in close contact with the infected must be checked for infestation and treated if necessary. A document containing suitable cover stories may be provided upon request, and can include covers such as gas leaks, bedbug infestations, and outbreaks of bird flu. Since the initial discovery of SCP-189 and the Foundation becoming subsequently aware of their existence, there have been numerous infestation incidents documented in various parts of the world. The source of infections outside of the SCP Foundation remains unknown. Theories range from the presumed existence of a previously unseen group of carriers transmitting the hair-imitating parasites to new infectees, or some other shared point of origin for these parasites, with some researchers suggesting there could exist a patient zero for infections, or an organism capable of spawning more instances of SCP-189, similarly to a queen in some insect populations. A considerable number of human beings and animals have been confirmed to have contracted one or more SCP-189 instances. The Foundation is working tirelessly to monitor outbreaks and ensure that the public remains unaware that there could be anomalous parasites living in their scalps. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-420, Aggressive Skin Condition.